I really have to pay attention when I'm crossing streets or anything like that because I can't hear very well and I can't see very well. I asked you guys on my TikTok and Instagram stories what your questions were about my hearing loss, and you definitely delivered. There are lots of questions, so let's just jump right into answering them. This one comes from @a49ersfreak on TikTok, and they ask, how are you adjusting to have 2 hearing aids now, and how are they working out? So for those who don't know, I wore 1 hearing aid from the time I was like 3.5 or 4 to a few months ago. It's been a journey to try and get used to having 2 of them. I had my hearing checked down here in Orange County about a month and a half ago, and I've had my hearing checked many times. There was nothing new about this process. They put you in like a little box and it's soundproofed, and they say, okay, I'm gonna start playing some sounds now in your right ear, and click the button. You have like a little clicker in your hand. Click the button every time you hear the sound. We went back to the office and he was like, so has anyone told you that you have more hearing loss in your right ear than I think you know? And I was like, no. No one's ever told me that. So my new audiologist suggested that I get 2 hearing aids this time instead of 1. I definitely am getting used to wearing 2 of them. It feels really weird wearing one in my right ear. Like, my right ear definitely gets itchy. I don't really remember what it was like adjusting to wearing a hearing aid in general because I was so young when I got my first one. So it's been a process to learn to hear new sounds, to learn how to take care of these very techy hearing aids. Like, they need to be charged, and I've only ever had battery operated ones for my entire life. I can control everything with my phone, which I could do when I had a Phonak hearing aid. Now I have Starkey hearing aids. But the Starkey app I found is just so much more intelligent. Not to rag on Phonak. I was a Phonak girly for my entire life. And this is definitely not sponsored by Starkey, but hey, if you're out there, you can sponsor me. I had to deal with my own voice being amplified for a few weeks. It sounded really weird. I was dealing with some occlusion. It's called the occlusion effect, where basically your voice is amplified in a way that you've never heard it before. It sounds like if you had a can and you were talking into the can, like it sounded really tinny and metallic, and I had to get the ventilation hole made a little bit bigger, which was a super easy fix. There is also AI built into my hearing aids, which is like a whole other conversation. I can just do a video about the tech and the amount of tech that are in my ears now. Next question. This is from @MoodyFoodieShenanigans on Instagram. Has your hearing loss affected your balance in any way? Really good question. So the reason I have hearing loss is because there are bones that surround your eardrum in your inner ear. And the bones vibrate when sound hits them. They vibrate. Basically, my 2 bones that surround my inner ear didn't form all the way in the womb. That's the story for just about everything else in my body too, which means that they don't carry sound all the way to my eardrum. So my hearing aid basically acts like the extension, the prosthesis, if you will, to those inner ear bones. Inner ear issues do affect your balance. Now, I don't know how much my inner ear affects it versus literally everything else in my body, but yes, I do have balance issues, if that's what you're asking. This question is from rad_vibes28 on Instagram, and they ask, is it easy for your hearing aids to fall out since they aren't behind the ear? This is a really interesting question for me. I have never had behind the ear or what's called over the ear hearing aid. If you look at my ear, welcome to the side of my face. I really hope my makeup looks good. Please let me know how good or bad, hopefully good, it looks down below. But if you look at the side of my face, my hearing aids go in my ear and not over my ear. I was always told that this is because I have really small ears and they're kind of squished which again, welcome to my body. She does what she wants. I'm gonna turn again. There's not a whole lot of space to put anything over the ear because there's not a whole lot of space between the ear, my ear, and the side of my head. So I have never had over-the-ear hearing aids. I've only ever had in-ear hearing aids. And I actually had the chance to try an over-the-ear hearing aid at the audiologist right before these ones were made. We were like trying to fit it over and it just would not work. My ears are still too small. Now, to answer your question about whether it's easier for them to fall out, I think an over-the-ear hearing aid would be less secure than my in-ear hearing aid. So if you look, I'll take this one out. Sorry for the feedback noises. It is, can you focus? Focus, 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 focus. Hopefully this is focusing. It is completely molded to my ear. And the way they do this is they basically take like a syringe full of liquid and squirt it into your ear, and they go really, really deep inside your ear and put it all the way down there, and then it hardens, and then they take it out, and it is an ear mold. So they're very secure in there, and they're not going to fall out, I promise. This question is from Swallows Amazons on Instagram, and they ask, do you know ASL, and do you have a sign name? So I grew up in a hearing family. I grew up in a completely hearing community. Although I had hearing loss, was not subjected to deaf people or surrounded by deaf people. I was told, I don't know how true this is, but I was told that I didn't qualify for like a school of the deaf or anything like that because I wasn't deaf enough. So I always felt like a disconnect, and I also didn't know ASL because they kind of just stuck a hearing aid in my ear when I was really young and didn't give my mom, who was a single mom at the time, who was really young, any resources. So when I moved out and started immersing myself into deaf culture and wanting to learn ASL, I was both welcomed by the deaf community and also discouraged from the deaf community because I was not deaf enough. I grew up in mainstream. I didn't know any ASL, and so when I met Kaz, my boyfriend, he had his seal of biliteracy from high school. He took 4 years of ASL, and he was basically like, okay, well, how about I teach you some? And then he started taking me to deaf events, and that's when I was really immersed in deaf culture. I started taking online ASL classes from Queer ASL. If you don't know who Queer ASL is, please check them out. They are absolutely amazing, and they offer pay what you can ASL classes. I really learned a lot through them, and I signed a lot in my home, voice off, which means you don't speak, you just sign. So Kaz and I do that sometimes, and we also do go to deaf events. So yes, I do know a little bit of ASL. I'm by no means fluent. I do have a sign name that was given by one of my ASL teachers from Queer ASL. It's this with a C because my name is Cassidy and I wear glasses. So this is my sign name, which is really cool. This question is from Theodore Jade on Instagram, and they ask, will you ever need cochlear implants? Really good question, and the answer to that is I have no idea. I don't know if I qualify for them. This was never a conversation that I even considered, nor have I had with any professional or within my family. I don't know the pros versus cons for me in this situation. I know a lot of deaf people have cochlear implants, and I know a lot of deaf people are against cochlear implants. Right now, I think I'm fine with the level of hearing that I do have. I've also had 43 surgeries. I've had 41 spine surgeries and 2 eye surgeries. I don't know if I would even opt to do that unless my hearing was in a really, really bad spot. And even then, I don't know if I would opt to do that over communicating more with ASL. This question is from @saturn.Audrey, and they ask, what types of hearing aids have you tried if that's necessary for you? So like I said, I grew up only wearing one hearing aid for my entire life until about a month ago, and I have only had a Phonak hearing aid. So Phonak is a brand that makes hearing aids, And I've only ever been a phonette girly, and I only had the battery operated ones. So it would tell you when it was gonna die, and you had to replace the batteries. They are teeny tiny button batteries. They are really hazardous for animals and small children. So I always had to make sure that they were locked up and Monty wouldn't get to them. I knew Champ wouldn't, but I also grew up with animals, and so I always had to make sure that they never got a hold of them. So I was always really anxious about that. And I had hearing aid batteries everywhere. So I had packs of hearing aid batteries in the car, in my bag, in my purse, in the bathroom, in different rooms of the house, because when it would die, it would be detrimental. There goes like a lot of my hearing, at least half of it. So it was always kind of a concern. What if I'm somewhere and my hearing aid dies? That was the only hearing aid I've ever tried. And now I have Starkey hearing aids, and I have 2 of them. This question is from @ego_31 on Instagram, and they ask, has your hearing been the same or has it changed over the years? So everybody's hearing changes, right? Depending on what environments you're in, depending on if you've been in any accidents, depending on if you're around loud sounds, music, planes all the time. And so my hearing has definitely changed over time. I had severe, profound hearing loss in my left ear pretty much my entire life. And then only recently have I had like moderate to profound hearing loss in my right ear. So it's absolutely changed over time. This question is from Emily_Grace on Instagram. And they ask, would you ever train Champ to help when you don't have your hearing aids in? So Champ is my service dog, if you don't know. And he's great. He's amazing at his job, which is mobility tasks mainly. What am I saying mainly? It's mobility tasks. So he's trained to open and close doors, to help pull me in my chair. He's trained for mobility assistance, getting me off the ground, things like that. So he's great at that. Do I think he could be a hearing dog? No. That's the short answer. I don't think I could train him for those types of tasks, mainly because 1, I don't have the patience, and 2, I don't know how. Also, he is almost 8 years old, and so I feel like he is gonna be retiring probably soon, and I don't feel like he would be thrilled at he does definitely love to learn, but I don't know. I don't feel like I would need him to do hearing tasks, but maybe a hearing service dog in the future would benefit me. I don't know. This question is from @tryingforababyc on Instagram, and they ask, what signs would a baby or younger child show? So just take what I say with a grain of salt, but here is my experience, and here's how my mom knew that I was hard of hearing. I was about 3.5, I think, maybe 4. I was in preschool. I was a very obedient child at that point, not in later years, but at that point in my life, I was very much a rule follower. I was a people pleaser. I wanted to do things correctly. I wanted to follow directions the first time. And so my mom realized that I was coming home from preschool in tears, like full-on meltdown tears, because I was getting yelled at in class in preschool. She was also having conversations with the teacher and getting notes home and things like that, saying that I was getting in trouble because I wasn't following direction. And my mom kind of realized that was not like in my character to not be listening or following directions. So she decided to take me to the audiologist because her thinking was, what if she's not listening to you? What if she literally can't hear you? So they checked my hearing a little more in depth than usual, and sure enough, I had profound hearing loss in my left ear. So again, take what I say with a grain of salt. I'm only one hard of hearing person. I can't speak for the entire community, but that's how they knew that I had a lot of hearing loss. This question is from @FelixLincoln850 on Instagram, and they ask, what makes conversations easier or harder for you? Things that make conversations a lot easier for me is in super loud environments talking louder to me and also looking at me in any environment, looking at me while you're talking to me, I will hear you because I lip read. So I'll understand you more than I'll hear you, I guess. Not all deaf or hard of hearing people do lip read, but I do, because it is really helpful for me and it's the way that I move about the world. So looking at me when you're talking to me, if you don't think I'm paying attention or hearing you, please just like wave at me like this or tap me on the shoulder. And say my name. I don't know why, but I respond a lot to my name. So those are some things that make things a little bit easier for me. The very last question is from _rollingdragon_ on Instagram, my friend Ben. And he asked, how is your hearing if your hearing aids are off? I still can hear. I do have some hearing. I just can't hear as well. So basically, if my hearing was on a dial, it basically sounds like my hearing is like the volume is turned all the way down if I don't have my hearing aids in. So I can hear, but I can't hear very high frequencies or very low frequencies. So I can't hear if someone's at the door. I can't hear Champ whining or Monty whining. I can't hear if the coffee maker's on, beeping, things like that that are kind of relatively important for you to hear. I can't. So it's really dangerous when like I'm crossing a street. I have to rely on my vision, and keep in mind I only have one eye that works and one ear that works, so I have to kind of have my head on a swivel and my spine's fused, so that's a little bit harder to do. So I really have to pay attention when I'm crossing streets or anything like that, because I can't hear very well and I can't see very well. And those were not all, but a lot of the questions that you guys asked on my TikTok and Instagram stories. Again, if you're not following me on TikTok or Instagram, what are you doing? I post over there every single day on both platforms, so go check that out. And if you enjoyed this video, you can click over here to hear and see a podcast episode that I did with Alyssa Richards, one of my dear friends. That's called Discovering let me like triple check Discovering the D in Deaf, where we talk all disabled, deaf, girly things. It was a really fun episode that I did a few months ago. And click right over here to see a really old video that I did actually, probably over a year ago. It is called Life is Confusing, Especially When You're Deaf Blind. It is a little baking video that I did, and I talked all about my vision and my hearing loss. Go check that out, and I will see you next week. Bye.